Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Code Garden for March. I'm Renee Noble, the Regional Cloud Advocate for the Australia-New Zealand region, bringing you all sorts of content to help you get started with Azure, GitHub, coding, Python, whatever you like. Welcome to what we're learning today. We're joined today here with Victor Olet, our special guest, who Victor is a PhD student at Curtin University working in the renewable energy sector, researching the generation of liquid biofuels to replace fossil fuel-derived transport fuels. He enjoys the sciences of chemistry and biology and the enhancement through computational techniques. Victor is also passionate about education and wants to support the current and next generation by sharing his knowledge and excitement with students through interesting pedagogies, enhanced learning experiences, and great tech tips that give learners a leg up. So welcome, Victor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Very exciting. So, what are we talking about today? We've called this episode VS Code for All because, as I just said, Victor is not a software engineer per se, but he is an avid user of technology, and he's going to show us how VS Code can benefit everybody, really. It's not just for software developers. So, what are we going to talk about in the Code Garden today? We're talking about what is VS Code and who is it for? We're going to talk about using VS Code for science and then using VS Code for writing. So a couple of interesting topics there that we're going to go over. So let's talk about what we're going to be, what the tools in the garden are today. We're obviously going to be using Visual Studio Code as well as the Python extension and Jupyter notebooks. So that's what we're going to check out today. So first up, before we get started, we do have a Cloud Skills Challenge that you can participate in if you want to get a leg up in your VS Code skills. So I'm just going to drop a link for that in the chat. We'd love it if you join in. And join in the chat as well. We've already got Suhan saying hello to everybody too. Do let us know where you're joining us from today. I'm joining you here from Sydney, Australia. Where are you joining us from, Victor?
I'm joining you from Perth, Western Australia.
Amazing. So join us in the chat. We'd love to answer your questions on the way through this episode. If you have more at the end, we'll answer them then as well. But, we can be flexible and, just give us a shout out. So, let's take a look at, what the first thing is. What is VS Code, Visual Studio Code? So VS Code is an IDE, and that's short for Integrated Development Environment. And I know that sounds pretty software engineering, but Victor here, chemical engineer. I'm a former chemical engineer. It's great for chemical engineers, at least, software developers. We'll talk about who else it can be for as well. And what does VS Code do? Basically, it does things like letting you run your code. Also, it helps you write your code because you can see like syntax highlighting, and it will give you, shortcuts that make things go faster and make writing code easier. It also lets you do things like see your website you're designing, like preview it, or preview maybe a paper that you've written using LaTeX, which I'm sure Victor might mention just a little bit later. And then there's also lots of extensions that you can add to VS Code that help you, we've said we're going to be using the Python extension. There's extensions for a whole bunch of different things, whether it's writing a specific language to working collaboratively over the internet, or connecting to tools like GitHub and Azure and lots of different things to make not only writing the code easy, but also putting it out into the world easy. So we've got all those things. So who is it for? Is it just for developers? Obviously not. That's not what this episode is about. It's about how everyone can use this tool, because it is just a tool. And, we can't just say screwdrivers are only for electricians. It's screwdrivers are for everyone, and VS Code is really the screwdriver of the IDE world, I'm going to say. So who else can use it? Well, we could have, say, data scientists, not, specifically a software engineer, but, getting further away from people who are known for writing code. We could have all scientists and engineers like Victor. When I was doing chemical engineering, we did have to do some simulations that were involving coding, and we're going to hear more about what Victor's been doing today in that pursuit. but also people who are writing academic papers. Super useful to do it in VS Code because there's ways to generate your papers so they look really good using VS Code. And also, maybe you just want to make a personal website, and it's super easy to do that with VS Code because, as we said, it plugs straight into GitHub, and using things like GitHub Pages, you can just go and make a website and have it deployed super easily. So yeah, those are some things about who this is for. So I think let's go and cross to Victor now, because he's going to tell us all about all the things he's been doing with VS Code and how it's not just for people who are building software necessarily. Cool. You're ready with your screen, Victor?
Yes, I am.
Fabulous. Okay, go across. Take it away, Victor. Tell us your stories.
Thank you. Appreciate the introduction, Renee, and I really echo what you said for VS Code. I think when I started out, I felt like, oh, it's just for like people who do computer science or in that along that space. But along the way, I think I found it quite useful for myself and for what I do. And speaking of, so my background is just, you've sort of mentioned it, but I'll just touch a little bit more. I'm doing chemical engineering at Curtin University. And my work is yet within the renewable energy space, and we're working to generate liquid biofuels, which the goal is to replace fossil fuel-derived transport fuels for the transport sector. Part of my work involves working in the lab, so mixing chemicals, and that's not that dangerous, but we do. There's that part of it, but a part of it is also computational, and so that helps. That's technically, more precisely, it's quantum chemistry, and that's another part I explore. And I thought I'd include something, sort of try to explain a very simple way, like what I do. It's just a reaction I'm studying, but this reaction is not very foreign. It's the same reaction that sort of makes fruits ripen. So when we have, like what was that? Is that a pepper? When it goes straight from green to red, that is actually the reaction I'm studying. Same thing with some other fruits that have a very nice smell about them. That is one of the chemicals I study. And so I do a bit of modeling. That's what this little chemical simulation there. At the bottom is one of the same reaction I'm studying, and that is something I've been exploring myself from a research side. At the same time, I should say I really like soccer. I had a photo of Ronaldo there, but I felt like I didn't have to put it there. I really like soccer and enjoy playing it too. I like writing. And this is again where, and these are sort of the things that sort of led me towards VS Code, because as a writing, it sort of started off when I was as an education assistant in one of the high schools here in Perth, and they were doing various, like, they were just doing poetry sessions, and I just thought, oh, I could try this as well. And so this is one attempt of a poem I tried, written in LaTeX and written within VS Code. It's just on the right, and then I can preview it to the PDF renderer. And so this is one of the aspects I've been looking at, my own, like, a hobby aspect as well, so on top of my research. But I find that with my research, or even with my hobbies, technology has really enhanced that. And in particular, for in this context, it's VS Code. I can be able to combine all these interests and be able to do and enhance them even more. So just to go to actually what I do, so I would like to spend this time to go through my workflow from the computational chemistry side, and then I will also, with time, also show a bit of how I use LaTeX. And so I want to show what my workflow is like without VS Code. And so when I was first introduced to computational chemistry, this was the workflow I was given. And so there were at least 5 different 5 different softwares and different various terminals I need to open to be able to do the workflow I need to do. So just for example, I have to SSH, there was PuTTY, which, because I'm from a Windows machine, sometimes I need to access to SSH to a Linux machine. Sometimes I need to access remote directories. And for that, I was introduced to FileZilla, which is another app. Text editor. I was not using an IDE at the time. The way I was taught was actually suggested to use Notepad++ for my text editor. Part of my workflow involves viewing molecular structures. And for that, there's another specific separate piece of software called Chemcraft that I use, and there's using the command line. So the remote command line, I would need that to run computational chemistry software because I can't run that on my native machine just because of the compute usage. It requires quite a lot of compute, and running that on my machine just it's not ideal. I also need the Windows subsystem for Linux terminal as well, and for that one, because I have installed I have some Linux-based software that I need to run, and I also run some Python code relating to that software. So that's the other part. And then the Windows, well, just general Windows graphic user interface. I have two software there. They're not some part of what they do, but they're generally for post-processing. And so these ones I would run on Windows. And so all these things, when looking back the way I was taught, there's quite a lot of different parts to look into. And so the interesting thing is that with VS Code, I can be able to do all this natively within VS Code without having to leave VS Code for really anything except some initial setups. And so that's really the benefit I found, and that's the benefit I would like to share with you in terms of what I do. As much as my focus is going to be on like what I do from the computational chemistry side, the goal is really to show how VS Code has enhanced my workflow in that I can do all these things natively. So I will just go ahead and start. I've actually recorded a series of videos. I felt that would be easier because some things needed prior setup. I can also, worst case scenario, I can actually demo that as well live. But I have the video which can sort of show how my workflow has been enhanced. The first thing I would start with is essentially just accessing VS Code and the layout. And this is in particular accessing my remote server. So I had a video here that I'll just go ahead and play, which sort of shows you how I start out using it. Let's see if this will go through.
So this is an example of an instance I use. You can see at the bottom left here, it indicates that I'm SSH to one of my remote machines. This is instance one of multiple instances. And one of the things that's pretty obvious, like I really like, is you have the remote navigation, the remote file directory system available here. And so you don't need something separate, a separate app to be able to access the directories. And you can open those files, as I've shown here. You can open those files and edit them as you wish. The other thing which is really handy is I have set up that it opens at this particular workspace. But if I want to open to a particular folder, I can choose open a particular folder that maybe I don't want this one. I want to open a particular one, maybe Orca. I could do that. And then what would happen is my terminal would have that location as the current working directory. And so it will, that way everything will sort of be based relative to that directory, which is very useful for me depending on the files I have to work with and what I have to do. For example, I like this view in particular because it allows me to access the .bashrc file, which sometimes I need to edit some environment variables and make sure things are connecting properly. So the idea of workspaces is really, really useful. And this is just one instance. One of the really small features, but I really like, is once you've set up your permissions properly, and once you've opened the various workspaces that you want, you can see that here I have 8 instances all on my pinned as recents. So if I want to switch between one instance to another, I can just open it in a separate tab, such as that way. And so I can do something on this instance, and even if I want, I can just have multiple instances that way as well. Depending on what I need to do. So I find that's a very useful feature. Small things, but it really improves my workflow and efficiency.
I love it. I love just like lots of little things all add up, and that's how you get through a lot of stuff. So I'm excited for all your little tips, because people are always like, oh, I want a big thing. It's like, no, you just need like 20 little things, and it's going to get you a long way.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I've seen as well. It's the small things, and I wanted to highlight the idea of workspaces. I've sort of touched on it, but it's actually quite useful being able to open an instance to the folder that you want. It just saves you a lot of navigation in between, and it's just peace of mind as well. So these are small things. I agree. So that was just the layout part of it. So the other thing I wanted to show is now that I've gone through a bit of the layout, was actually just submitting a job. And there's other features of VS Code that make that handy. I will show the video first and then go through this. And again, the focus is not so much the chemistry, but just showing you how VS Code helps my chemistry. So I'll just go ahead with this video.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and demonstrate one of my workflows. It's an optimization calculation. And along the way, I'll just show you how I do it in VS Code and how the little workings I have that have been quite handy for me. I made a copy of one of the files, and I'll just use this as a testing. So one of the things I first like doing is setting up my directory. So right now I'm in the home directory. If I type in cd, shows I'm in the home directory. I want to get to that directory. Typically, I would use the cd command and navigate that manually. But since I have the directory on hand here, I can just copy the path. Well, put cd and just right-click to paste that, and I'm in the path already. The other thing that I'd like to do is now navigate to this particular file. This is my input file, and so this is the file which I will need to submit a calculation for. Not to worry too much about the details. I just want to point out this is a structure. It's a molecular structure, which I would need to sometimes visualize. And so I'll get one of the tools for that in a minute. So my input file is ready, so I need to submit this job. In that case, there's a particular file, SLAM file. SLAM is a scheduler that I use. In that case, this is the setup for it. I just need to copy the input name to here. Now, Control D allows me to select multiple. If there's same names, I can select them both at once and then just change that. And so I've edited both things at the same time. I'll save that, and the directory is where I want it to be. So I think that is fine. I've used this command before. So rather than type it, the submit command, I'll use Control R, which allows me to search for a particular a command from the past. So I type SB, and this is the particular command that I use to run a job. At the same time, sometimes I like seeing the core, like the processes actually work. It looks nice, but also just to make sure that the job actually submitted and is running. So there's an option to split the terminal here, which I will use. And now I have same location, but different instances. So I use the command htop. I can see the instances there. And so I will go ahead and run this. Okay. Well, you can see it's running. You can see it's 100%. Each core is 100, so that shows it's running, and that's good. The calculation typically takes some time, so I would, rather than wait until it actually finishes, I'll just demonstrate another calculation that is complete.
Fabulous stuff. Good. Like, yeah, I think learning all those VS Code, bits and pieces, just super useful. So yeah, we've got VS Code shortcuts on the slides. You got to get amongst it. Get some of those shortcuts into your life. It'll just make it so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that's one of the value adds for me with VS Code. And sometimes you're just working and you get used to, but then you realize, oh, there's a shortcut for this, and it just really enhances your workflow quite a bit. And along the way, you build your own repertoire of shortcuts, which of course still learning as well. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them in this list that you can get in the link. I highly recommend having a look. I need to have another look, but yeah, really useful, and to use in conjunction with those like Linux commands that you've just shown us how to connect to before, like super interesting when you are working with Linux machines, whether it's your local one or you're SSHing into another one.
Yep. And I should also mention, Renee, like the this like the little keyboard, like the showing the keystrokes on screen, that is also a VS Code command. Yeah,
I was
it's
like, Victor's so prepared. He's made all this. He's edited this video in advance. No, so cool.
Yeah, no, it's called screencast. I think it's called screencast. It's a command, which I probably should have put there. So I only found it yesterday. I was like, oh, this is very, very handy.
Well, I'm gonna use that one all the time.
Yeah. So that was the job submission. I'll just sort of demonstrating also the splitting the terminals, which is a really useful feature. Also being able to do different things on different terminals within the same workspace. So that was that aspect. And here, this would now be a demonstration of extensions. VS Code extensions are one of the things that really enhance VS Code as an editor, and that nature of open source really helps a lot. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to really do my work. So without further ado, I'll just play the video because it kind of covers that. So.
Okay, so our calculation is finished, and now I'll show you how I go through analyzing the structure. The calculation is actually not finished, so I'm going to do, I'm going to switch back to this directory, which I know is complete. So I will do that. So I could copy the path and paste it. Another useful tool, which is just basic, it's bash basically, is cd and then the minus button, which allows you to go back to it allows you to alternate between the directories, the previous directory that you use. So if I do that, it should send me back to this directory, which is the directory that I'd want. I'll just clear to make more room. So here, so this is the output file, which is what I need to see. So to check if the file is finished, I Control N, and that takes me to the bottommost part of the file. I can see that the calculation is finished, and this one just took 11 minutes, so it wasn't that long. But sometimes I also want to see what does the structure look like. So this particular file, one of the files that comes out is this XYZ file, which is a structure file. Now, typically, if I want to view this, I'd have to copy these coordinates, paste them on another piece of software, and then visualize that. But one of the things I'm really grateful for to the developer who made it is a particular extension called, let's see if we have it. There we go. It is there. Protein Viewer. It's the only piece of software on extension or VS Code extension that can actually open these files. So I'm really grateful for them. It's because of them that I actually can be able to do a lot of my workflow within VS Code. So I went ahead and installed that. And so how I would run it, this is the file I want to open. I would just right click and then launch Protein Viewer from files. And so with that, it allows me to see the file. The one I've actually opened is a trajectory file. So it'll actually show me the trajectory of how it's been, because the calculation is an optimization calculation. And so it uses a least square approach. So it just keeps on iterating until there's least change. And so I can show you how that works. I just need to turn that on, and we can see the optimization go on. And it starts off quite rough at the start, quite large movements at the start, but then as you get closer to the true structure, the movements are much more gradual. And so I can sort of see what's happening. And this is useful as well because I can know if it's not, I don't have to wait until the calculation stops. I can tell that if it's not going to converge, I can tell by the way the trajectory. So this is quite useful to see, and especially useful to see within VS Code. And so this is one of the useful files, one of the useful things that one of the useful abilities of VS Code is the open source aspect of it, where developers can just create software that can fit their use case, and in this case, fit mine. So this has been a big add-on to my workflow. That was the trajectory. What I really wanted to open was this. This is the final structure. It's the same idea, but again, just shows you I can see the structure. I can rotate it, look at the different sides, and look for particular if it's satisfactory. So that's an aspect I wanted to show.
That's amazing. There is an extension for everything. That was so cool. Yeah. So we have a question from Sudhansu. Which extension was that? I'd love to try to use something like that.
So the extension is called Protein Viewer. I don't know how to share it, but it's called Protein Viewer. I don't have a link on it on the slides, but
I'll see if I can get one for you.
Yeah. I actually had it on the video. Let me see.
Yes.
Oh, but it's not going to be full screen.
It's
that's it up.
I think I found it on the VS Code library website. So I will drop this in and
Okay.
hope that it's the right one. Yes, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's just I really come to appreciate open source developers. Like they really help so many of us improve on our workflow. So if it wasn't for them, I don't think I could have been able to use this at all. So quite handy.
Amazing.
Mm.
Well, that's a very top tool. What other cool tools do you have for us? I'm very excited now. When that came up and did all the protein arrangement, I'm like, that's very cool. Victor's got some stuff up his sleeve.
Yeah, so that was just one of the calculations. I'm doing different calculations. The other one, which I'm gonna show next, is something called NEB calculation, which again a little bit of chemistry, which I will display there. Generally, it's useful because I'm looking for something we call a transition state. So normally when we have reactants and then we have products. But so when you have a reaction from reactants to products, you normally have a step in between called it's a transition state, but they're not very easy to see experimentally because they just have a very short lifetime because they're not very stable. So they only exist for what, femtoseconds or something. So it's a very tiny amount of time. But the beauty of computational chemistry, because it's sort of time independent, I can be able to isolate a transition state. So, which is what I'm going to demonstrate here. At the same time, I use a bit of I use Python and Jupyter Notebook to be able to do that bit of isolation. So I'll just play the video and maybe if any questions or anything, we can discuss a bit further. This is a bit of a longer video. It's like 10 minutes because it's quite a lengthy process, but I think it captures that aspect quite well.
Cool. Very keen to see it.
Another calculation that I found useful, which VS Code has helped me with quite a bit, is what we call a NEB calculation. And this one is a bit different from the previous one because it needs us to do a bit of plotting. So this is for this calculation. First of all, navigate to the directory. Just copy path space. The other aspect, I need some files, and as you can see, there's quite a lot of files which look fairly the same in terms of the naming, and so it's a bit difficult to search manually. So here's where the go-to file, the search bar comes in handy, which is Control P. So one of the files, the file that I'm looking for is called an interp file. See if it'll, but there's multiple interp files, so there's one which I want.
I'll just pause here because I had a little issue like finding the file. So I'll skip to where I actually was close to finding the file just to save a little bit of time. Okay.
While you do that, I'll read out what Sue Hansi said is open source is the best way to learn and collaborate, in my opinion, which I also think is great. And like, just you can all build with each other's building blocks. So it's amazing. So yeah, we're glad to have you here in the audience, Sue Hansi, as always.
Nice to hear. Okay, I'll go ahead and play it from here. Okay.
So this is it here. And so for this file, this is okay. Another handy tool is sometimes just to get more view space, you hide the navigation and you hide the terminal. I would zoom out, but just for your visibility, I leave it like this. So this is the data I get from this file, and sometimes I just need to see what we call the potential energy surface looks like. And so this is the graph which I need to plot because I need to see what it looks like before I can make further decisions. So I can imagine plotting this as it is it's quite difficult because I don't need all the rest. I just need this data from 20 all the way to 155. I don't need the rest of the data. And so for that, I found the easiest way to do this is to use Python to be able to extract, to read the file, zero in on the part which I want to plot, and then ignore the rest. And so I have some Python code for that, which is in this particular file. I would use the search bar, but I know it's gonna be at the top. This is the file that I'm talking about. It's my Python file. It's a code that I run for this, and when I run the piece of code, so essentially, first of all, just to walk you through, I open the file, open this particular file, and then search for various I search for the start here, for this line in line 20, and okay, again I'll hide this for more. I search for line 20, and then it shows me that it has found it with 19, which really from 0 index is 20. And so with that, I create my variables. I store the values in variables, images, and energy. That's just the writing process. And then I used matplotlib to plot my images and energy variables. And so what that gives me is this graph of images and energy, which is actually what I need to see, because what I'm looking for is something we call a transition state, which is typically the highest energy point. And so I can see that there's no other energy point except this one, which is good because I only have one energy barrier to worry about. Sometimes I have small multiple ones, which means I need to adjust my calculation. But this is good that I can just see the one. And then this is useful because I'm doing this, or actually I'm doing this within VS Code. But as you can see, I'm also running the Jupyter Notebook within VS Code, which is one of the extensions which you can get. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm already running it. So there's various Jupyter Notebook extensions, which again is super handy because then you can run the notebook within your VS Code and I'm running this on the remote server as well. So all these things I would have probably have to do them on separate, if not for VS Code and the remote connection, I probably would need to do it on various pieces of software or different terminals, but I can do it on the one. And so I can see this is the file that I can see my calculation looks good. And I've used this file, so I don't need this one anymore. What I do need, this one I do have to search because it's too many to be able to find just that way. So I know it's called the neb file. I know it's one img. Sorry, it has a TCI. It's out file. I also know it has acetic acid there. And so the one I'm interested in is this one. So that's the file I'd like, which is the output file of the calculation, basically. Just give it time to load up. So I need one more file. The other file I need is a trajectory file, which that one I'll just, it shouldn't be too far down. Here it is. I need this file as well, so I'll just open that. Pardon me, my internet is a bit slow. So there we go. Finally, it's loaded up. So I need these three files for another operation. So I've already checked that my I have checked my graph. This is not that's okay. I've checked out I'm okay with my graph. I need to check something on this particular file. It's called what's it called? Path summary. Yep. So in this output file, there's this section I need. This one, I don't need to write anything. I just need to Control F and find this particular line of code, this output line. Let's see, do I have path summary? Yes. Yes, I do. So this is really what I need on this file, and this is a trajectory file. So what just to show you one of the, how I find it very useful is, I'll put that there. I may not have enough space because I've zoomed in quite a bit. It's okay, I think I'll still show you. So for this one, I'll zoom out slightly just to show. Okay, this is just so I can show another aspect of what I like to see. So these images, these essentially, this number is the same as corresponds to each structure. I need to make sure that dynamic bonds are on. Yep. I'll just start back again. So each of these images corresponds to each of this molecule structure. And so it's just me scanning through. So sometimes I know I have this TS value. I know I have this barrier. I need to know which one it is and how it looks like. And so how this is useful then is I know the TS, which is the transition state I'm looking for, is between image 7 and 8. And so because this is 0 index from 0, and this starts from 1, so this image 7 is really image 8. So if I go to image 8, okay, actually, yeah, that is correct. So my transition state, this point here, is between image 7 and image 8. And so it is quite likely between this and this, which actually is what I'm looking for, because if you know a little bit of chemistry, when you're moving from reactants to products, it normally involves a breaking of a bond and forming of a bond. And I can see that through this process, I'm actually forming a bond and breaking a bond. And that is a very good indicator that this is my transition state. And so this is what I'm looking for. And I can also look, it's not perfect, but this images, if it's normalized between 0 and 1, this looks to be about 60%. And so 0.6 of 14 images, if you can do the math, let me just do a very, very quick one. 742. It's about 8. It's about 8.4, which is, again, I know it's between this and this. So that's it. What I'm showing here actually is just I can do all this again within VS Code, where I can check this barrier. I can compare it with where the TS is occurring, and I can also visualize and see that indeed I do have a bond breaking and a bond forming. And so this is quite a good confirmation of my transition state. And again, it's quite, and I'm leveraging quite a few things. Again, this is the open source extension. Here I'm using Jupyter Notebook and Python, and this is just typical a text editor. But there's various, I can do that all within. And the last thing sometimes I need to check, okay, I won't be able to see that on this, it's on another file. I'll show that one later. But this hopefully just shows you why my workflow is on VS Code, because it's not just because I like to use it, but it's just, it's provided a very good environment for me because I can do everything, almost everything that I need to do just natively. And so that is quite useful, and I just wanted to demonstrate that.
Very cool. Love seeing that little hydrogen move across to the bigger molecule. Very cool stuff. I assume it was a hydrogen. They like to move around,
Yes.
right?
Yes, you're right. It is a hydrogen.
Still got it. Very, very cool. Seeing it move, I love it. Very amazing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very cool stuff.
Yeah, I think this is one of the I only discovered, and it's not like when I started using VS Code for my work, I didn't really think of this. It's just when you're working with different files, and then hang on, I can actually, rather than go and do this somewhere else, I can compare it within. And this is one of the things I really like doing, because I have to verify. Because from a chemistry side, sometimes you don't have the right structure, so you need multiple ways to validate that it is correct. I do have another way of validating it, which I'll show on another slide. But yeah,
very good to see, like, the Jupyter notebooks, like, so useful just to be able to run small snippets of Python, just have them on hand. But then I really love when I'm doing something with matplotlib to do it in Jupyter notebooks, because I don't want to have to open a separate file. I just want it to appear exactly where I ran the code, so I can see and check out if my data science is looking correct. So super useful. Amazing. And then you can just like pinpoint the section you want to use with this other extension and have your cool dancing molecules. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. Oh, and just with the notebook, one of the other things I like is that it saves your output. So you don't have to run things afresh all the time. So even for what I showed, this was a previous run I did maybe months ago. So it's really cool and just very handy to have that as well.
Agreed.
Okay. So that was another aspect I wanted to show. What did I have next? Okay, so the other thing which I wanted to demonstrate was because I'm so what I've been doing so far is via SSH to a remote server, but and so that has just been sort of a data collection. But now sometimes I need to do a bit of post processing, and so what happens is that I have a VS Code. I run VS Code natively, but to access the Windows subsystem for Linux aspect of it, because I have certain software that I install on Linux, and I would like to use them from the Linux side of things. I could have them on Windows, but just because of the ease of, I would like to have everything together because my notebook is also on the Linux side of things. So if I can port it to the Linux side of things, it makes it easier for me. So that's one of the recent features from a couple, at least I think it's a year or maybe a year, more than a year, but it's not that long ago, was they introduced the graphical user interface to WSL. So in the past, you could only open like files that don't have a graphical user interface. So if, for example, a text editor, you can edit like directly. But if you have a software that has a graphical user interface, you needed other ways to open it. You need some extra additional software. I can't remember what the name was. That's how I was taught initially. But with WSLG, I can still use VS Code with no extra additions and access the user interface. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate from a bit of post processing. So and hopefully that will come across from this side. So I'll just play this video.
One of the last thing I'd like to show is a bit of post processing, and again how VS Code has helped me in that aspect. One of the features that I've benefited from, which is more of a Windows subsystem for Linux feature that is integrated in VS Code because I'm running WSL on VS Code, is using software that have a graphical user interface. So because I'm using a terminal, oftentimes it works best for software that do not need a user interface. For example, like text editors that you need to put in text. But if you need a user interface, it was a bit limited to do that. But now I can do it with the relatively recent introduction of this feature. And I'll just quickly show you. The software doesn't matter. So I use two software here. One is this particular one. It's not important what it's doing, but I just want to show this because I do some scripting on this, and this is why there's a Windows version of this software, but it doesn't allow me. It doesn't allow me to script as well as I could script on Bash on Linux, and so because of that, I was able to create my own script that I can use on Linux, and because of the ability to script just various functionalities, I find it easier for me to read on Linux. And so I run that file on Linux, and then when I do that, it gives me the files that I need for another piece of software, which is what I really want to show. So when I type, this software is called VMD, it has a user interface, and when I load it up, you can see it loads up an interface. And so this is within it's from this terminal. And so this directory system is actually available on this software as well. I mean, just for demonstration, I'm not going to do anything. So these are the same files that are actually available on the software. On VS Code. So it's quite a handy link. But I'm not going to load things from there. I'm going to use the terminal, and I just want to demonstrate quickly. I want to load up this file. This cane. Oh, I didn't navigate to the directory. I'm pretty sure I didn't navigate to the directory, so I'll have to do that.
I do that all the time.
Yep. I'll screencast as well, because it'll be useful. Yep. And so I'm on this directory, and from here I need to load this file. Source instance, so I need to load up. Oh, I need to load the software because I closed it. So that's
Lots of little steps.
Now I can load up this command. Yep. And so this allows me to see this, for example. This is the processing I've done, and it's the same structure I showed in earlier file. And so this is what I have, and I'm doing this from Bash using the user interface. So this is, again, point, I'm not leaving VS Code. I'm doing this from within VS Code. So this is a part, as you can, I think it shows it's open via remote desktop. So that's really part of VS Code as well. Typically, this is a workflow that is outside VS Code, and I would run it, say, on Windows Terminal. But for me, I would like to keep everything inside. And so all the things I've shown you, I'll be able to do natively. So generally, I would just export this. I would just quickly render this as an image, but as I've already done it, I won't do it now. I would render that as an image, which is an image I believe I've already shown, but I will just show it again. Well, as an example of the image. For example, I would turn it into an image like that. And so that is a workflow that typically was out of VS Code, but I can do within VS Code, split the terminals and run different things on various terminal. A very handy thing. And so from the beginning to the end, a lot of those workflows are separate, but very I'm really glad I can be able to do all these things with natively. So yes.
Very cool. Love seeing some electron clouds, and that's very exciting. And when it's spun around, it was like, oh, I didn't know it was about to move. So very cool stuff. I should have expected that it was a 3D model, but I love it. So yeah, for people who don't know what WSL stands for, it stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux. In the, I don't know how many years ago, a couple of years ago now, Windows got the ability to run Linux within Windows as well. So you now have all the tools you'd have on Linux while still having all of the tools you're used to on Windows. So best of both worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah. I should maybe just point out, like I always make so many mistakes. I thought I'd leave that out because I was thinking, oh, maybe I should redo this video again, because I was messing up to put the commands, but I feel like that's really part of it. Like
authentic.
Yeah.
What I'm about here in the Code Garden, like the authentic experience. It's not like, and then you simply just do blah, 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 and it all works. It's like, no, it does take, there's a little bit of, working around, finding the right things, and that, can seem hard. And I think like that first slide that you showed, which was like, here's the process that I use for my workflow, is really indicative, like insightful, that like, it's hard to work out exactly how to use your workflow and like what to put in there. But once you have it, and you'll know it, and then you'll be able to do it. And I think just being able to be told by someone like you, Victor, like, here's what I'm doing, and lets people go out and copy some of those pieces of your workflow. So it's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one more. It's a short one, the last one. We're just going to show how I use images, how it helps me with processing images. We're still okay for time?
Yeah, we've got 10 more minutes, so we can do that.
Okay. This is a small, like, it's one of them. I feel like it's underappreciated, but I really benefit from this feature. I'll just go ahead and play the video because I think I've narrated within, so I'll just go ahead.
And another aspect that I'd like to show is just the ability to open images and media files. I don't think many editors can do that. And so this is, as a calculation I showed you earlier, it's something called a frequency search. And so what I can do, I've transformed that visualization into a GIF image, and I can play it on VS Code. So sometimes I want to double check where if the skipping to the detail, if it's the right coordinate reaction pathway. So this is, I have different files I can check. For example, if I can open PNG files, this was a GIF file I mentioned. I can play videos as well. This is a video. Let's just see this in full. So this is a video of the same thing, of the same reaction, but now in video format. Again, I can play that on VS Code natively. And this is an image. I can open images. It supports various images. This is a bitmap image, and these are the types of images that I have, which can also be supported. And so this is quite handy from the post-processing side of things. If I want to see things natively, I don't have to go and use other apps. I can literally see them within VS Code as well.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Look at them dance, going back and forth. Yeah. Very useful. Yeah, because I hate it. Yeah, when you're like, oh, I've rendered this image, but maybe it's just from Matplotlib or something, and you have to open it and open it in your system viewer, and you're like, no, I just want to stay in VS Code. So super useful, like that it just natively does all that stuff.
Yeah, I found it very, very useful as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So do you have any last tips for us? We're going to talk about writing quickly, or have we got any more of this computational stuff we're doing here?
That is the end of the computational stuff.
Of the dancing electrons and things. They're good dancers.
Do you think so? I can show quickly like some of the writing I do.
Yeah, I think we've got 8 more minutes left. So put your questions in the chat if you have any, and we'll get to them. But until then, Victor, take it away with what we can write in VS Code.
Yeah, I think I hit the slide because I wasn't sure. But I'll do a live demo. I'll just have to navigate to this file. This is a settings file again. I will have to. I'll use a screencast just so you see what I'm doing.
Great.
Control home. This one as well. So one of the things that I do as well is a bit of writing and in particular I use LaTeX. And so LaTeX, LaTeX is quite used for scientific writing just because it's like a typeset language. So it's quite useful in terms of authoring long documents or documents with lots of images, and you want them to stay in a specific location because sometimes it's very hard to assure that because things sometimes move around all the time. So this is a previous document I did. I just want to point out, first of all, the extension. There's an extension here called LaTeX Workshop. Okay, that's the preview. I think I need to put it.
Got us in the chat, LaTeX Workshop extension.
Yeah, the LaTeX Workshop extension by James Yu. So this is one of this one and together with which one is it? I think that's the main one. And then it has the dependencies. So when you install it, it installs the other things that you need. And so quite handy to be able to use LaTeX. You still need to install probably LaTeX in your system. But once I have that, I won't really go into detail about how to use LaTeX, the language. I feel that is, if you want to go ahead and learn that, it's just more of showing how VS Code enhances. So with the moment you use, so LaTeX has its own special editor, a text editor, which is the kind of standard which people use. But I try to use VS Code, and again, thanks to people who open source developers like James, who I just showed, developed the LaTeX Workshop VS Code integration, so I can do it on VS Code. And the beauty of doing it in VS Code, it means I'm exposed to the features within VS Code. For example, if I want to use version control on Git, or even I can do that. My current one, I'm not using that, but you can set up Git, and thus you can have your file continually saved and version saved as well. That's a handy aspect. And you're also exposed to a lot of the features I said earlier. Like you can open a file on different. You can split your views, for example. Maybe you want to split it the other way, but you can split such that you have. Oh, where did I send it? Oh, I didn't split it properly. I want to drag it to the bottom. Oh, I missed. Okay, one last try. There we go. So, for example, if you want to focus on one particular line, which if you want to edit on another part, you can do that. And that features, like I mentioned, of showing words which are similar. So Control D allows you to select multiple. You can also set up cursors different locations you want. So using Control, I can set up cursors in different places. And so, okay, not in this is not the use case, but if you want to make multiple edits, you can do that. These are features that come within VS Code. Another thing, which I will show you how to do, is so you can run. So whenever you have LaTeX, you can run it and generate a PDF. And so you can view the PDF again natively. You can choose to view it externally if you wish, but I choose to view it natively. Once I do that, I have the file here. And so this file is this one. And so if I want to, I think there's certain features which, where is it? you can be able to sync between the two. So if you want to navigate to a particular location, you can do that, and vice versa from your LaTeX document to your PDF, you can do that as well. And so it's quite handy to use LaTeX again within VS Code, just because of the features that VS Code natively provides, but also with the extensions that come with it. So it's just a demonstration. LaTeX has a steep learning curve, so it's something you need to look into quite a bit if you want to use it. But once you get it, it's very useful, and VS Code has made it even easier to support using LaTeX. So I just wanted to show that. Just you mentioned you have a terminal as well. So if you want to run commands, which LaTeX has, you can do that here as well. So I just wanted to show that part of it as well.
Amazing. Yeah, look, I personally have never dived into learning LaTeX, but it seems so useful once you've done it, and VS Code just seems to make it like so much easier. Like you can get so much more out of it. Like Sue Hansen is saying, you can jump to parts from the PDF into the editor. So that's just really helpful when, otherwise you have a 200-page document and you're like, oh, now I need to find that one line and thing. But that just makes it super easy. So yeah, amazing stuff. So I guess, that's all of Victor stuff. We're nearly at time. If you have any questions, do jump in the chat and drop them in there. That's not what we want to see. Where is the slide? There we go. Yeah, so I'll remind you that we've got our Cloud Skills Challenge going on. It's got some stuff to get you started with VS Code if you're new to it and you're like, this is all super cool. I want to do it. I want to be Victor. That's it. And have all of those hot tips, shortcuts, and some cool, not in the we won't have any cool computational chemistry modeling in this Cloud Skills Challenge, but it will get you on your way to getting to having dancing molecules. So yeah, you can get started there. So we're nearly at the end. So I'm going to say that we've got our survey that we always have. We'd love it if you can fill it in and tell us, what you thought about today's session. And you can also watch this episode on demand. But I do have more links. So the survey's in the chat. And just remember to use the event ID 18718. And yeah, you can watch the show on demand also with the link in the chat if you want to give it to your friends who love VS Code. But we have more stuff coming up for you next month. If you love GitHub or you want to know how to love GitHub and how it's going to improve your life as well. We've got Introduction to GitHub, specifically targeted at students and rising developers. We're really about rising developers here in the Reactor. What is a rising developer? It's you. Whoever you are, if you're keen to learn more, you're, extending your skills and boosting your career, you're a rising developer. And if the thing that you want to boost your skills with next is how to get started with GitHub, or it's how to collaborate with GitHub to get, working with teams, come along next month in the Code Garden, and I'm dropping the links into the chat. And as always, you can always watch previous episodes of the Code Garden online. One of our links has made a break for it from the previous one. There we go. So we've got both our links for our sessions next month, and we've also got where you can watch for previous episodes in the Code Garden on my personal website. But yeah, that's all we've got for today. Thank you so much for everyone in the chat. Love to have you here. And yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button, because then you'll get more stuff and we'll know that you liked it, and then we'll do more stuff like this. Unless there's any last questions, I'm going to say thank you so much to Victor for coming along. We hope to have you back here in the Code Garden sometime. And yeah, thank you everybody. And let's end the show with that. Bye everybody.
Bye-bye.